Hey guys, what's up? It's Aime. Welcome back to my channel. I make commentary videos on the intersection between environmentalism and social justice. You guys love my commentary videos and I do too, but I wanted to switch them up and make them a little bit more educational and research based. And my favorite kinds of videos to watch on YouTube are actually social commentary. So I love watching T Noir, ContraPoints, and Tiffany Ferg. And apparently you guys also watch Tiffany Ferg, so y'all have good taste. But I kind of want to make videos kind of similar to their content. So moving forward, on Saturdays I'm going to be uploading an environmental commentary video with some kind of social component. So for example, I'm currently working on a video on environmental ethics and then also elitism within the sustainability movement. But one video that I have planned for a couple weeks from now that I'm super excited about is about overconsumerism and how it's impacting communities of color, but also specifically how it impacts developing countries and the exploitation that we see there. And I'm super excited for this video to come out. Kind of a part 2 to my video on environmental racism, which you can watch somewhere up there. I don't usually do super long intros, but I'm really excited to where my channel is going, so I just wanted to kind of let y'all know what you can kind of see in the future. I'm super excited. But let's get back to like today's topic, which so today's video is going to be on why Jordan Peterson is wrong about climate change, or an alternate title, conservatives don't understand climate change and should shut the fuck up. Roll the clips.
First of all, it's very difficult to separate the science from the politics.
It's really not though. It really isn't. So all you have to do is listen to the scientists and not the politicians, because those aren't the same groups of people. It's not that hard. Climate change is not a debate, and I find it really frustrating when people try to make it a debate. Most scientists agree that climate change is a problem and it is man-made. So when people try to turn it into a debate, it just frustrates me, because literally the experts on these issues all agree, and then some politicians are like, well actually in my opinion. I don't care about your opinion. And you also have to consider that scientists have nothing to gain. In fact, they have everything to lose if they are just conspiring and lying about climate change. So when you're a scientist, your word means everything. So why would a scientist lie? Scientists have nothing to gain from lying about climate change, but politicians, oof, they have everything to gain from lying about climate change. So I don't understand how people can believe politicians who are saying it's a debate, even though most scientists agree.
And second, even if the claims, the more radical claims, are true, we have no idea what to do about it.
We do know what to do about it. We just have people in office who just don't want to do anything. They know exactly what scientists are telling them to do, they're just ignoring it. I really hate it when people, especially people with a platform, say things that are just straight up not true, and I honestly can't tell if he's doing it on purpose or if he has no idea what he's talking about. Maybe it's both, but if you just Google climate change solutions, you'll get too many answers. Like, there's too many options that we can take, too many things that we can choose to do. We're just choosing to do nothing. So this is a shameless plug, but on my website I've been kind of compiling resources for people to learn more about climate change and sustainability. So I have like tabs on creators that you can follow to learn more about climate change. There's books that you can read, documentaries you can watch, podcasts you can listen to, organizations to follow, and then I've started compiling a list of different things you can do to take action, so petitions to sign and programs that you can do and stuff like that that are related to sustainability. We definitely know exactly what we should be doing. Scientists have been saying what we should be doing for years, but y'all are just ignoring them. Organizations like the IPCC have been putting out reports and kind of saying how much we need to reduce emissions, by when, and all these other milestones we should be reaching. But governments are just ignoring all of them and pretending like, oh no, there's nothing we can do about it. It could be because they just don't feel like doing it, or maybe because they're benefiting from the status quo. I'm just thinking aloud here. So just to give myself some more work, because I'm a Virgo, I'm going to be putting on the screen as many words, as many things I can fit that are climate actions, things that individuals can do, communities can do, corporations can do to be more sustainable and to actually fight climate change. And as you can see, the words are tiny. They are tiny. I really wish I had, like, you know, those microphones so I could like come close to it just for emphasis. There's so many things that we can be doing, and if you can just utter the words that there's nothing we can do about it, you clearly haven't done your research. So you can miss me with that we don't have anything to do bullshit.
Thank you, next bitch.
And besides that, well, what's the solution? What are we going to do? Switch to wind and solar? Well, good luck with that. Just try it and see what happens. We can't store the power.
So I find this talking point really annoying. Renewables aren't perfect, so therefore we shouldn't do them. We obviously need to keep improving renewables and we need to keep working on them, but that doesn't mean they're not currently working right now. Like, think about other things that we use that keep improving. When the first camera came out, do you really think it was as good as the camera I'm using right now? Obviously not. The first cars were pieces of junk. Solar energy, wind energy, other renewables, they're not perfect yet, but that doesn't mean we don't use them, and that doesn't mean we just continue to use coal. We have to use what we have now, even if it's not perfect, and then work to improve it for the future. That we have to. Otherwise, like, climate change is going to catch up with us, and then it doesn't matter what we do because we're all under fire. Like Australia, that's going to be the entire globe. The entire globe.
Germany tried it. They produced more carbon dioxide than they did when they started because they had to turn on their coal-fired plants again.
So I'm a really petty person. So when I saw that he was using cherry-picked data to make a point, I was like, okay, I'll do the same thing. So what I ended up doing was basically just Googling. This is not scientific by any means, but I basically just looked up which countries have a really high percentage of renewables per kilowatt hour that they consume. So countries that mostly rely on renewable energy, because technically the US and China are the biggest producers of renewables, but I think in the US only 30% of the energy we consume is renewable, so it's really not that much. But there are some countries that have like 90 to 100% renewables per kilowatt hour of energy consumed. So I found the price of electricity in the US, and I'll have it on the screen because I don't remember it, but I'll have it on the screen for you guys. And then I also found some countries that have a high percentage of renewables that they use, and then also have cheaper electricity, because that would basically invalidate his whole argument. A lot of these countries actually use more renewables than Germany did, and they still have cheaper electricity. That's why you can't use like single data points or single case studies to make a full argument, to try to make the argument that renewable energy is not a viable energy source. You can't just use one country to prove that point. So some of the countries I ended up finding are Paraguay, Costa Rica, Norway, DRC, Ethiopia, South Korea, and Canada. So I think all of these countries but one has cheaper. I think Costa Rica has a little bit higher electricity, but it's still around the same range. But the rest of them have cheaper electricity, and they use more renewable resources, some of them at like 100%. So checkmate. So there's probably a lot more to the story, and this is a very complicated issue, which is why you can't just, once again, you can't just use a single case study to determine this whole argument. But I just wanted to put a disclaimer that I'm not saying that renewable energy sources are viable just because of these countries that I found that have cheaper electricity than the US despite using more renewables. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just invalidating his point by using the same argument. And then I looked up the whole Germany thing because I was kind of curious what happened in Germany, and it is true that they transitioned to renewables, mostly focusing on solar power and wind power, and they ended up failing spectacularly. If anything, what this shows is how we need to basically specialize renewable energy sources for different countries or even different regions. Like in the US, you wouldn't put windmills in California and solar panels in Chicago. Like that's just, it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. So you need to make sure that you're looking at the climate and the area to figure out which renewables are going to basically have the best impact and give you the most energy most of the time, rather than just saying, oh, solar is cool, let's just spread that across the whole place. What we do need to make sure is that each country doesn't have the same expectations, or even each region or even each state or city, because everywhere is different. This is something where it needs to be specialized for the income of the country, the environment and the climate, and the energy demand, obviously. And if anything, like Germany failing says nothing badly about solar or wind. It speaks highly of Germany because they actually tried, and the US isn't even trying, so who are we to laugh? He also brought up the idea of cost and saying that Germany ends up paying a lot more for electricity, And I think it's really interesting when we're talking about the cost of electricity to note that our current energy infrastructure, the greenhouse gases that we produce, are subsidized by the government. That is correct. The government is paying these companies to not go out of business, which you'd think that in a capitalist country wouldn't be happening, but here we are. I just think we should let these industries die and switch to a more cleaner energy economy, and it's actually going to end up saving money if you do any little, just tiny minuscule amount of research on the cost of transition to a green economy, or specifically a green energy infrastructure. It saves money. Like, it's just facts. And obviously it's a huge upfront investment, but literally, what isn't an investment? Green energy is the future, and it will save us money 100%, hands down. I'll sign with my blood if you need me to. Electric vehicles are super exciting because of the fact that there's cost savings. If you switch it out for 30 years, EVs become cheaper than regular gas-powered cars, and this is for multiple reasons, including the fact that you don't have to pay for gas, obviously, and then also the fact that there's less maintenance involved with electric vehicles. And then there's also some social benefits or negative externalities that aren't normally calculated when we just look at regular gas-powered cars, and it's the fact that we don't have exhaust going into the air and literally polluting the air that we breathe. In the end, all I have is respect for Germany, and the rest of y'all need to catch up.
Well, we don't want nuclear.
So I think this is really interesting, and technically he is kind of right, because nuclear energy is kind of controversial. And the interesting thing is that when I was in college, I was in a group called 5,000 Issues group. We would meet every week and talk about politics, and one of the days we talked about climate change, not whether or not it existed, because, you know, we all had brains, most of us anyways. I'm just kidding. So we were talking about climate change solutions, and I was very surprised, but most people agreed that nuclear energy is very important for the future when it comes to renewables. I am a huge supporter of nuclear energy, and let me explain to you why. So oftentimes nuclear energy gets a bad rep because when it fails spectacularly, and like, it's very dramatic and everyone sees it, and we have whole TV shows about it. But over the years we have kind of been improving nuclear energy, and it's becoming safer and also cheaper too. The other big thing about nuclear energy is that it's very expensive to invest in, but the thing is, it's really efficient, like super efficient. I don't remember the numbers, like, once again, I'm not a scientist, I just remember concepts, not specific numbers. Nuclear energy is super efficient, so you basically get your bang for your buck. They also don't take up a lot of space. One of the biggest issues of wind and solar is that they take up a lot of space, and that's obviously another huge issue. Like, I would hate for us to like continue deforestation for a green energy infrastructure. Like, if we could just do green energy without deforestation, that would be like a win-win. So that's why I think nuclear can also be a big benefit compared to the other renewables. So it takes up less space, it's more efficient, and the downside obviously is that it's dangerous, but I feel like we do have an outsized fear of nuclear energy. So the way that I put it is that our current energy sources that we have, like coal and oil and natural gas, those are also contributing to deaths, specifically when it comes to people. Places where they have coal plants and where they burn a lot of coal have higher rates of cancer, so that's obviously killing people. Fracking for natural gas, that leads to more earthquakes, so that's also leading to destruction and people dying. And then we also have, in general, like when we burn fossil fuels, that it's going into the, like, it's not disappearing, it's going into the air, and that's going into our lungs, and we're getting asthma for it. And then the other thing is kind of getting away from the anthropocentric view of environmental destruction, is looking at the way oil spills impacts our ecosystems. So obviously oil spills, like, oil gonna spill. You can't stop it from happening. Oil spills just happen, and when they do, they obviously kill animals, they obviously contribute to environmental destruction and habitat destruction. which is not good obviously for the animals that live there. So this is just horrible, and we shouldn't be allowing this to happen just because it's not directly killing people. But then the other thing to consider is that it could be indirectly impacting us, because some people are just selfish and aren't going to care about the environment. We should be considering how species extinction could negatively impact us. So I was taking a class in college on environmental ethics, which I'm making a whole video about, and in this class we basically talked about ways you can advocate for the environment, and some of the ways that we talked about, it's called anthropocentric, and it basically just means human-centered. So when you look at an anthropocentric view of environmental destruction, you consider how destroying certain ecosystems could negatively impact people, and there's obviously a lot of ways. Oftentimes habitat destruction leads to more severe flooding, so that's not good for people, and destroying habitats could lead to certain species being extinct, and who knows, maybe one of those species has a cure for cancer. But then the other thing that we need to consider is the fact that we don't really know how certain species going extinct are going to basically spread to other problems within ecosystems and eventually get to us. Climate change will catch up to us eventually, so that's why we need to be careful with species going extinct, because we don't know which species are keystone species that are literally just holding the whole family together. If you think about an ecosystem as like a family, we don't know which one is the mom who's just trying on for dear life to keep the family together and not lose any children. Like, we have to be very careful on which animals go extinct. Whew, that was a long one. So I kind of went on a huge rant about like keystone species and stuff, but basically what I was trying to say is we're more afraid of nuclear than we should be, and instead we should be focused on the fact that our current energy structures, then the fossil fuels that we're burning, are also negatively impacting us and the climate, and there's consequences in the future that we might not see until it's too late. So we should be actually taking more climate action, and if nuclear needs to happen, then it needs to happen. What I'm trying to say is we're just so used to fossil fuels that we're not seeing how it's literally going to kill us in the future, and we just need to be more careful.
What happens at night? Oh, the sun goes down. Well,
so this is literally such a stupid take. I cannot believe a grown man would say, I mean, Trump has also said some dumb things related to this same sentiment. One, we have battery technology that is usually able to allow the use of the energy that you use from solar kind of overnight, and we're also improving this battery technology because it's not to the point where it can be super reliable yet, which means that we still kind of have to subsidize the energy with other sources, usually natural gas, because it's better than coal. That's literally the whole answer. Like, it's pretty simple if you think about it. We do need to switch to a clean energy infrastructure, but nobody said it's going to happen overnight. I think the Green New Deal said like by 2050, and Biden says by 2030. Like, nothing's gonna happen overnight, and no one claimed that it will. Like, literally, if you look at the definition of a transition, is that it's not full stop, like it's not cold turkey, it's just you transition by just slowly going to the next phase. I get frustrated with things like this where it's just really dumb. Like, we will need to use fossil fuels when we're transitioning, but the point is to slowly decrease our dependence on fossil fuels and slowly increase, or vastly, as fast as possible, increase our use of renewables. An analogy that I think of is the fact that if your boat is sinking and you've called for help and they're coming, you don't just sit there and wait for the boat to sink. You try to do something to slow the sinking of the boat. You try to take the water out, you try to plug it, you do something to save yourself rather than just waiting and hoping that eventually the solar panels come to save your life.
well, we should cut back. We can't consume as much as we are all consuming. It's like, well, maybe, except the data that I've read indicate that if you can get the GDP of people up to about $5,000 a year.
So I didn't hear this until I'm just now editing, and I'm very confused because he says the GDP of individuals, even though GDP is not, it's never by individual, it's either by country or sometimes you can calculate a state GDP, but I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Like, the rest of his argument is really dumb, but I just thought it was funny that he just mentions the GDP of individuals, which isn't a real thing. And also he mentions $5,000, which I consider to be very low for a point where people will start caring about climate change in the first place. Like, 5K per year, that's so little. Like,
then they start caring about the environment, and the environment cleans up. So you could make a perfectly strong case, I think, and a reasonable one, perhaps even a humane one, that the actual idea would be to get everybody in the world who's poor, desperately so, out of poverty as fast as possible, which would increase consumption in the short term, because then they'd start to care about the environment and things would clean up.
so once again, this is just literally such an idiotic take, and this time it's also an ignorant, idiotic take. So first of all, if he actually believed in this, he would advocate for international wealth redistribution, which I can tell you, I can guarantee you that he does not advocate for that. He's literally only saying this to go against climate change rather than to say something he believes in. I obviously don't know what his philosophy is, but I feel like he's a utilitarian, and as a utilitarian, you should probably believe in international wealth redistribution because it will make most people happy. So why don't you? Back to the actual argument. It doesn't make any sense. Poor people aren't causing climate change. Poor people are not the issue. If his logic was actually used correctly, we actually want more people to be poor because poor people have a better impact on the planet than rich people. I think people have this wrong idea about population, and they think that, well, back in the day there was less people and there was less pollution. Now there's more people and there's more pollution, so therefore people equals pollution. But that's not the problem at all. The problem is the way that people consume and the way that people live their lives. The issue isn't that poor people don't care about the environment. In fact, even if a poor person doesn't care about the environment, they're still going to have a better impact because they couldn't have a bigger footprint if they wanted to. We don't need more rich people in the world. We just need rich people to stop it up for the rest of us. But he is right about the fact that we need to lift people out of poverty. I 100% agree with that. But when he just straight up turns around and says it's the fact that poor people don't care about recycling is the issue, like, that's just not the case at all. Like, he really started out so great and then just flopped. So I give the example of me. I live in a Western country. I'm currently living in France and I'm from the US, but I was actually born in Africa, so you know, I started out great. And I'm someone who tries to live a sustainable lifestyle. I eat vegan, I take public transportation, I buy secondhand, I do a lot of things to live a more sustainable lifestyle. So I was actually born in a refugee camp in Tanzania, so let's compare me to someone who is currently living in that same refugee camp who's my age. So that could have been me, honestly. And even if this girl couldn't care less about climate change, couldn't care less about trying to be sustainable, she's still, because of the please just let me film. Even if this girl couldn't care less about climate change, because of the restraints of her society, because of how she has to live, like, it's not her choice, she's still going to be more sustainable than I ever could be. So that's why I'm really frustrated with this kind of sentiment. It's basically blaming poor people for climate change, like, even though that's literally so idiotic. Like, recycling isn't how we're going to save the planet. So even me, as someone who cares about the environment and tries to do my best, I'm still going to have a bigger impact than most of the people on this earth. Like, as an American, that's just how it be. But I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but his whole argument falls apart when you consider the fact that most people, I'd say most people in developing countries, do make that $5,000 per year, and yet we still have climate change. And even in places like the US, there's still a lot of pollution. There's still a lot of CO2 being burned, and half of the country doesn't believe in climate change. So it's just, his whole argument is just so dumb. That's just what happens when you live in a country or in a society that's inherently unsustainable. You can try your best, obviously, but it's never going to be perfect. Can we just not blame poor people for destroying the planet? Like, I can put numbers on the screen to show you just how much of a problem the Western countries are. So please leave poor people alone. Like, they didn't do anything.
It's like, okay, well, what are we going to do about global warming? Well, good luck figuring that out. I don't see a solution on the horizon. Then get some glasses. I don't know what to tell you. Or you can Google it. Like, Google is free, use it. So in conclusion, I hate it here. Why are we letting these people talk about climate change as if they are experts, which they are not? I don't understand it. Like, yes, share your opinion, but
please don't make it as if it's a fact when it's not. Oh my god, that's the second time I've dropped my phone today. Ugh. If you want actual accurate information about climate change from actual scientists, like obviously I'm not a scientist, but I do share studies and actual information but I have a list on my website, like I mentioned earlier, of, are those birds? I also have a podcast myself where I talk to people who care about the environment, and that will be linked down below as well. And if you want to support my YouTube channel, you can support me on Patreon. And also thank you to my patrons for supporting me, because it allows me to make amazing content. If you're not able to do monthly contributions, then I also have my PayPal, so you can just do like a one-time thing. Either way, thank you for watching to the end. Every single time you like my videos, comment, watch the ads, subscribe, share, just anything like that, any kind of engagement, that's also supporting my channel, and I really appreciate it. But that being said, oh, I'm also going to have my Instagram and Twitter linked down below if you want to follow me on there. That being said, that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to crack my phone by the end of this week. Anyways, that's it for today's video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.